If we have one person that died from an overdose, it is too many. If we have one that died from an overdose, it's too many. And we have 13.6 per week. As a church, we're not just here to worship. As a church, we're not just here to congregate and be comfortable. As a church, we must take action to do something to get involved with prevention. So during the month of October, we want you to invite a friend, invite members of your community, ask them to come and join the conversation with us so that we can begin to do something about overdose death in our county, most importantly, in our zip code at the church, at our church, in our 37207 zip code. We have the second highest suspected drug overdose in our county. I say that's too many. What do you say? That is too many. We want to be the second highest for something. Second highest for the community leading people to Christ. Second highest for the community that helping the unhoused find housing. But we do not want to be the second highest for overdose death in the county. Would you agree with me? So I want to thank you for joining me tonight and ask you to continue to come. At this point, I'll be back with you, but I'm going to invite Ms. Joyce Perkins from Meharry Medical College to come and share with us. Lots of goodies.
Thank you. And let me again say my name is Joyce Perkins, and I'm working with Meharry Medical College, Department of Family and Community Medicine, and I'm a consultant. I also just want to say a little bit about myself, mainly so you just don't think I've just popped up and here I am, but I came down to Nashville out of New York, and I went to TSU. I did my master's degree. I did my internship at Meharry. They hired me. I worked in the Department of Psychiatry in Elam Mental Health Center. I worked in family medicine back in 84, 85, 86, and 87. And here I am, and I'm just going to say I just turned 81 2 weeks ago. So I say that. So I say that because of some of the issues that we'll be talking about, because the opiate crisis, the opiate fentanyl, as I call it, crisis, is not just for young people. It goes across board with age, race, gender. I'll talk about that in a second as well. I've had people say to me, well, you know, this is only in the white, because they hear the word opiate, so they think it's just in the white community. And I have to correct them. And there's a lot of misinformation. I think, as Dr. Ann had, please bring 1 or 2 friends each week, because each week is going to be powerful. Next week, I think, in my mind, it's one of the most important pieces, because they'll be talking about Narcan, as I will tonight briefly, and testing the drugs and things of that nature, but it's all important. I guess one of the things I wanted to say before I get started as well, too, is you might hear some things that you might scratch your head for and say, why are we doing this? What is this all about? We are in a crisis. I was doing drug and alcohol work back in the 80s. After I got through with my master's, they hired me again for outpatient mental health, and then they asked me to work inpatient in the substance abuse unit. And it was pretty sad when people relapsed. And you're going to hear me use some words tonight like being poisoned. When people used to relapse, that was sad. They had to start from day one. It was embarrassing. It was sad. But they picked themselves up and they started again. And this is 2023. I'm using the word people are being poisoned today. you might not have, or people might not have, who use a second chance if they're not aware of knock-on, if they're not aware of doing something immediately. And I'll talk about that in a minute too. But like, it's just a whole different ball game with abuse these days, because I don't think, and if I'm wrong, I know Dr. Ann, please, say so, but I don't think there's a drug these days that people are not mixing with fentanyl, whether it's marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine. It's being mixed, and that's what's showing up. And there's also another drug, it's called Trank. And that is something that we have to be really mindful of. And there's a medical name, but it's a street name of Trank. Trank is used for very large animals, and it's not a narcotic. And the fact, well, you can't use Narcan to reverse the overdose. And so people are mixing not only the fentanyl, but the Trank as well, and it's not being tested. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and I don't pretend I am, so if I don't know something, I say I don't know. But these are the things that we have to be mindful of when we're thinking about this. And we have to be really thinking out of the box. I have some notes because how much time do I think? Okay, I just want to make sure that I have the time. I wanted to say a couple of things too. Dr. Ann with Metro is doing an amazing job, which I'll say something else about. I mean, absolutely, the leadership is what counts. And I know that she has to report to something, but like, I have a feeling that if she has an idea, that she gets it done. That's just what and I don't really know Dr. Ann very well, but like, that's just my and I trust my instincts. And Pastor Gordon Jones, I was rehired at Meharry back in April to do what I'm doing now, to talk with churches, to make the awareness. I said, this is not politically correct. This is, I'm straight out of New York. I've been living here since '79, actually. I came down in '79. They said to me, Joyce, you know the community better than most. But I did not know Pastor Jones until April, when I gave a presentation with Dr. Collins. And he was one of the first, if not the first, that came up to me and said, we need to do something at my church. And here we are, a whole entire month. I mean, it's absolutely, that's what every church in Nashville should be doing. Something, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but just something, because of what we're dealing with. Metro Stars, which it's another organization in Meharry. We were out at the street festival a couple of weeks ago, and we had booths. Everybody had their information out. There were so many people over our booth. My daughter said to me, who is 57, she's put up with me for all of her life, but like she doesn't know what to do with me sometimes, but she said, what are you giving out there? And the health department had Narcan with them. And the people who were doing the street festival, they gave us some time on the stage. And as soon as it was finished, the table was just covered with people who needed, it was gone in a minute. And that's just what's really out there. And people need to have it. One of the things that Dr. Ann, and maybe she can talk a little bit about it, she can come up with me, but she took about 5 or 6 people to New York. And I have to tell you, I've been carrying this article around with me, but I've known about this program. It's called On Point. It's up in Harlem. It's, and also in Washington Heights, which is up Manhattan. And I didn't realize it until I started looking into it, But the city and the state, if I'm correct, they don't fund that either, that it's privately funded. But what it is, it's a space. I'm not even sure how big the space is, but they have doctors and nurses, knock-on, test strips. They have everything that you need to make somebody safe. And they let people, they call them safe site consumption sites. And people come in, not only do they get what they need to keep safe with their drug use, but they get food, shelter, clothing, housing resources, and things of that nature, because that's what's missing. That's some of the disparities that we're all feeling and seeing right here in Nashville as well. And this program is, it's like, I carry this article. This article came out on February 26th of this past year. And the program, do you know when that program started? No, but it's been going much before that program. And again, it's supervised drug use. Now, I've had people in my life saying to me, "What are you talking about?" And I said, we have to do something that's saving lives. And a long time ago, I don't usually come dressed in t-shirts. But the t-shirt I'm wearing is 25 years old. I take care of my special t-shirts. I have 2 of them. And I bought 2 of them so I could read the back of what this t-shirt says. This t-shirt came out of Chicago Recovery Alliance, which is one of the largest needle exchange programs to this day in the country. It was run by Dan Bigg. And Dan Bigg, I'm going to spell his name, B-I-G-G. I'm just going to say, please look him up. And he's like an icon in the world of harm reduction. I'm going to take a minute and read the back of the t-shirt. 25 years ago. Talk safely with your partner. Use a sterile syringe for each shot. Drive sober. Wipe with an alcohol pad before injecting. Prepare a clean shot. Build strong relationships. Rotate injection sites. Inject where it isn't red or swollen. Use clean drugs. Work for peace. Use the smallest needle possible. Apply pressure to the site after injection. Use your own cooker, cotton, and water. Develop safer ways to split drugs. Dispose of syringes safely. Drink lightly. Reduce amount of drug use. Eat well. Have sober sex. Sleep well. Respect yourself. Make condoms, use fun, use lube to excite, choose your time to use, cop safely, choose not to use drugs, keep knock-on around. 25 years ago, keep knock-on around, let me see, keep your veins clean, learn to inject yourself, enjoy your high in a safe place, have fun, use less harmful drugs, injection, smoking, snorting, eating, know the law, reduce frequency of use 1 drug at a time, open your senses naturally, learn to detox safely, overcome shame and resentment, know CPR and first aid. I'm going to add, what we would add now is use test strips, help others to make their own positive changes, know your drugs, know where you can get help and what is offered, and other positive changes as you define them for yourself. That was 25 years ago. So Dan was up in Chicago. I was here. My son lives in Chicago. At the time, we were doing HIV work. Bottom line, every time I went to Chicago, I visit Dan. We would go out to eat, I would talk, I would come back with papers that would show there was another minister in town, Reverend Edwin Sanders. Maybe some of you might know his name. And you could probably come up here and talk about him, but like he's my partner in crime. How they put me next to him, I've known him since 1979. But he started the first response center. I came back from New York. I spent about 5 years. I left here because things were moving slow for me with HIV. And so I went to New York and I learned how to do needle exchange. I am not a recovered person, but you know what? If you care, compassion, and you really care about strangers and families and people that you don't know, people that you do know, people know that. We came back, Reverend Sanders, Ron Crowder, some of you might know his name. Ron is somebody that's had HIV and AIDS, my goodness, probably for about 25 or 30 years. He's in the Dominican Republic now. But the three of us started a needle exchange, and it wasn't legal. This was under the ground. Now, Reverend Ed was probably, I'm going to say, like Pastor Jones. I mean, he's going to cross all the I's and all the T's. But and that's what he did. But we worked with the police chief. We worked with the Attorney General, and we never got into trouble. I never ended up arrested or in jail. And we started this needle exchange here in Nashville. Ron taught me to go around to different sites. He introduced me to the landlords of the streets, as they were called. And once I felt comfortable, we would go on and start another site. And we had about 6 or 7 sites during the whole week. I had a little Volkswagen Bug carrying dirty supplies. The interesting part was we worked with the Lintz Board of Health. Actually, Dr. Stephanie Bailey was the head of the health department. And she took all of our needles in, made sure that we had a place to put them after collecting them. We had the congregation bring in plastic containers. $25,000 to piece the pieces together. And we had this exchange going on. The health department helped us. I think one of the funniest thing, I had to convince Dr. Bailey about the cotton, because when you're using drugs, you can't use the cotton that you get in the drugstore because it's too thin and it gets clogged up in the syringe. But there's something called real cotton. They're more like what the dentist uses, like they're quite little and packed tight. And we had to teach each other how to do all of this. But we gave out the cookies. And I say all of that because all of that is needed today too. Every piece of treatment is needed, whether it's inpatient or outpatient. Harry, I gave out a flyer, and if you take a look at it, everything on there, if you have insurance, of course, they'll take your insurance. But if you don't have insurance, everything that you see listed, they will give you at no cost at all. So if you know people that need services, whether it's what they're calling medication-assisted treatment, and that's buprenorphine and some of the new modalities. There's a methadone clinic here in town that also has ways in which to help people. Also, there are a lot of organizations. The sense is that there is hope. You know, there's a lot of work to do, but there is hope. I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't believe that. And then, of course, the needle exchange, because there are some people who are not ready to come into treatment. But you have to respect them. You can't just say, here's the needle, come to treatment. This is what they're doing. This is how they live their life. And you have to try and understand it the best that you're able to. And I don't know the answer to everything, but I do know that in order to do a real program, you need folks who are using, and yes, it helps to have people who are active and clean, but you also need people who are on the streets using, on your board, on the community advisory boards. I know here we were looking for a person. I know a person the very last week. Actually, it's on Halloween, I believe. You'll hear her talk about her story, and it's amazing. I asked her, and I'm giving a little planting of a seed. I said to her, "What was your bottom line? What got you clean?" She said, "I was just sick and tired of being tired." And it took, and then they came to arrest her. She did X amount of time in prison, and she said to the cops when they arrested her, "What took you so long?" you know. But that's where it is. People want to do something. They don't know sometimes what to do. And this is really a real different piece right now, because you might not have that chance. If there's not knock on, and I got to take, and I know you'll hear this next week. I hope all of you in this room come back with 5 other people, because in my mind, the program that Dr. Ann took her team with, knock-on is all over the place. In other cities, they have vending machines, all right? I know the politics. I'm not naive. I know the politics. We've all been watching some horror shows here. But you know what? I've been talking to people. The beauty shops, barber shops, restaurants, where I go, and the same places where you go. I do a lot of work over in 37208 and 37207 and out in Antioch where I live. People are willing to do, they just don't know what it is. I'm going to try my best to get some folks to come here next week, because knock on, it saved lives. That's the bottom line of it. And you can have 1 dose, which helps, but what are you going to do if you have 3 people? One of the things they say is don't use alone. So what if you have 3 people with bad stuff and their drugs, and you have 3 people and you need 3 kits? And what's happened now is, I've had some folks say to me, well, I can buy it over the counter at the drugstores. You can test it. I checked it out a few months ago, but I went yesterday because I knew I was going to be here tonight. And I said to the pharmacist, I said, how much? My first question was, do you need a prescription? He said, no. I said, okay, how much is it? And I knew the answer. I just wanted to make sure it was still the same price I asked about 6 months ago. $45 plus tax. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had to, keep that on hand all the time, that's a lot. And people who are using drugs, that's not going to be their first priority. They may go into a drugstore. It's going to end up breaking into drugstores, not for the knock-on, but for drugs. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is, not in my backyard, because this is a real problem, and it's certainly, a problem right here in Nashville, in terms of where to go. And again, this church, it's gonna, can I say what you shared with me? Dr. Ann said to me a little while ago, there's another organization here called Streetworks, right? It used to be run by Ron Crowder, that was my partner in crime, and now Sharon Hurt is running it. And so they do needle exchange, since it's been legal. And they're going to do it in the back of the church here. Hopefully it might be a permanent site. Right now, it might be just a one-time thing. But if you know people who are using, let them know where it is and what's available. Because once they know it's there, it's all done by word of mouth. When we ran our needle exchange, we didn't put ads in the paper or anything of that nature. It's by word of mouth. And we got so big that my daughter sometimes would come down to help if somebody got sick and just couldn't make it down to the site, because I couldn't do it completely by myself. I did, but it was much better to have 4 hands or 6 hands. In order to make the kits, we use Reverend Ed's church, we had all the ladies in the church. We had about 7 or 8 ladies on a Tuesday night. I'll never forget it. Sitting around the table, putting cookers and cotton and condoms into a bag and syringes and and one day one of the ladies said to me, "Can you bring one of the people that take the kids so we can actually meet him or her?" So I asked Reverend Ed, and he said, "Sure." So we brought in 2 people. They were, both ends of it was just amazing to see. They sat around, they talked, and they understood differently. It takes away the stigma when people understand what's going on. And in today's world, it's, what can I say? It's really serious because fentanyl, you might not have a chance to be able to do this. Couple of more points if I still have a couple more. It's okay? Sorry about that. I told you I just turned 81, so I get this magazine called AARP every month. So you talk about a little bit of this. I got to say, I was happy to see it. But this is the size of the article that is in this magazine. And basically, it just says, overdose deaths rise sharply for older Americans. Fatal drug overdose among older Americans, which have been rising for 2 decades, spiked even higher in the recent years, according to a study published in JAMA, which is one of the big medical journals in psychiatry. Overdose deaths among people 65 and over from all causes, including suicides and accident, rose 50%. From about 4,500 in 2019 to 6,500 in 2021. Though these are still a small percentage of the roughly 100,000 overdose deaths recorded in the U.S. each year, the study shows a continuation of alarming trend. The rate of deaths of overdose tripled among older adults from 2002 to 2021, from 3 per 100,000 people to 12 per 100,000. And several factors of the blame. The study says one major cause, the opiate crisis that began in the late 90s, saw Americans become addicted to drugs prescribed for pain relief. Some of them have turned to dangerous street drugs laced with fentanyl, an opiate 50 times more potent than heroin. No group is untouched, says Shover, a co-author of the study. We're seeing a sharp increase across the board, including in older adults who previously had low overdose mortality rates. So again, across age, sex, sexual gender, I just want to include all of it because this presentation is not going to take a whole piece of it in terms of the disparities that is there, but I'm going to include gun violence because obviously here is a major, I like the term public health crisis also. Language, disabilities, we have a lot of diverse communities here. And the disparities occur due to the way the society is structured or the result of a bias of treatment by the healthcare system. And it's not everybody. There's a lot of caring people, but sometimes people in leadership, it's just unacceptable sometimes. And what can I say? I'm left over from the 60s, and when I lived in New York, I got involved with ACT UP, and they taught me a lot. It was like, this is what's needed, let's do it, one way or another, and we got it done. I want to stop and just take some questions because I think what's on your mind, and especially it might give Dr. Ann a good way to pulse for next time too. But what is on your mind or questions for the both of us? I hope this was helpful. And thank you for showing up too. I mean, it takes a lot. You know, like I always want to go around and say, what made you come tonight? What got you out of the house at 6 o'clock and to come here? So all of it is important. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Joyce. Thank you so much, Joyce. Let's give another Riverside round of applause to Joyce. I think there might be a question.
Thank you for. My name is Marie Wright. Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to know, do you know what percentage of people who get involved in the needle exchange program that really goes to treatment?
I didn't hear the question.
I think the question is how many people actually go into treatment? The answer to that, you know, I really don't know. I know that sometimes at Meharry, there's a waiting list. I know in many places, and that's part of the problem, that we don't have treatment on demand. And
Let me comment on that, Joyce, for a second.
maybe you can respond to that
The real
too.
answer, Mrs. Wright, is this, that here in Davidson County and across Tennessee, we do not have enough treatment beds to accommodate the individuals that need treatment. That's the reality. The reality is that often someone overdoses. We have a program called Partners in Care that's funded by the health department, and it is a combination of police, EMS, and a clinician that rides together and go where someone overdoses. You can pick them up. They're able to, the clinician can assess and then determine whether or not the individual needs to go to the emergency room. What we know is that 43% of individuals that get assessed does not need to go to the emergency room. We're able to send them to other referring treatment institution for care. But part of what happens is those that go to the emergency room, once they're there, there's not an available bed of another place to go. So what are we doing at Public Health to deal with that problem? We've created a program called the Opioid Care Process. And I'm putting that out for anyone who's interested. I think your mic is destined not for greatness. I'm so sorry. One of the things that we've done is the opioid settlement funds that are available to the state of Tennessee, we receive at Public Health Department, and the state receive a large amount of money in the settlement funds. What we're doing with the money that we receive is we're putting out a request for proposal to individuals in the community that would like to partner with us to help with treatment. So it works from the time a person overdoses and they get picked up and decide that they need care. The process will be, you get picked up, you go to EMS, you need care, you go to a detox facility, you have wraparound services, you're able to go to counseling, you might need transportation, you might need housing, all of that is going to be a part of the opioid care process. And so we have that request for proposal developed. It should be coming out in the public soon. And so if you're a provider, even as a church, and you think you can do something to partner with Metro Public Health to help us deal with this issue, we welcome you to put in an application when that goes public and help us care for the community. Remember, our zip code where this beautiful, wonderful church sits, where I'm a member. So I sit right there, fifth from the front on my left side, every week. In our zip code, we have the second largest cases here in our zip code where the church sits. So what my Bible tells me, so let me go where you live for a minute. Let me go where you live for a minute with the word. Okay? We go to the word, and I'm going to the Message Bible, and I'm going to go to Psalm 102 verse 4, and it says, I'm a ghost of my former self, half consumed already by terminal illness. I'm going to take liberty, pastors, and say half consumed already by overdose, by substance use, by substance misuse. And so that's an issue. So if we just sit here, constrained in love says how the church deals with this issue. The love of Christ should propel us to take action. The love of Christ should propel us to do something to our community. The love of Christ should tell us we need to reach across the aisle out of our comfortable seats and get next to our brothers and sisters out there in the community, empower them, do something to help them rise above their condition. It is okay. If I was standing up here talking about cardiac disease, or if I was sharing my testimony with you about my granddaughter and how the Lord brought her back from being on a vent after non-responsive twice, you'd be applauding like you're doing right now, because you will say that that's the power of Jesus. What makes you think the power of Jesus cannot take somebody who has an opioid problem and move them from a point of being addicted to the point of freedom? What makes us think that he only takes care of heart disease? What makes us think he only takes people off a vent? What makes us think that he only cure our physical illness? He said you were consumed with illness, and then he relieves us of our illness. All illness, not just heart disease, not that's diabetes, not just from being on a vent, but from being from having an overdose, from being on xylazine, from all of that. The God that we serve look down from eternity through the ages and say, listen, move right now in 37207 and help me reach my people. That's why we're here. We've got to build relationship with the community so that they know that 800 Youngs Lane is a place you come when you are too sick to survive on your own. So we can't just sit here and be uncomfortable because we use words like condom, because we use words like needle exchange, because we use words like fentanyl strip and test strip. Let us be uncomfortable enough to reach the next person so that overdose is not what we're talking about. As a church, we need to be moved to action. We need to compel to serve. Our compassion, my Christianity, my love for Christ ought to move me to do something about the problem. See, when nothing changes unless we become uncomfortable with where we are. And that's when real change happens. So I'm empowering you this evening to realize that it is biblical for us to talk about the human condition. It is Christian to talk about reaching those who needs to be reached. It is real human compassion to reach across the aisle, to go to the tobacco store, to go out to the liquor store, to go to the convenience store and say to somebody, listen, hope is available at 800 Young Lane. Won't you go with me and get some information? Won't you come with me and find some treatment? Won't you walk with me? Let's not just pray about it. Let's do something about it. Let's be about it. Let's get fired up so that in 37207, this time next year, we're not talking about the second highest overdose cases in our zip code. I want you to know that it's all right to know that you're all right with Jesus, but it's better to know that your brother and sister out there in the community is getting to know Jesus. See, until you come close to losing something, you don't understand how it's important it is to have something and to keep something. But let me tell you something. I came close to losing my granddaughter 3 weeks ago, and I am more compelled that I need to reach out to another human being and help them find life, because life is worth living. So if you're sitting comfortable, I want to make you uncomfortable this evening so that you'll invite somebody to come join us every Tuesday night And like Alicia Trusty Jones says, get woke so we can be about the business of helping to take care of community. I thank you so much for being here this evening. I hope you bring somebody next Tuesday evening. We'll have some light refreshments. We'll welcome you. We want to keep having this conversation. We want to be about our Father's business, and our Father's business is taking care of those who need healing for their mind, their soul, and their body. He's not just trying to save us from one thing, he's trying to save us from everything. God bless you.
In regards to the services offered at Meharry, whether or not your insurance is approved for services, you can still receive care. I'm saying you, but of course someone that you know can receive care free of personal expense. And the number to call into is 615-327-5875. Again, that's 615-327-5875. And if you would like one of these handouts, Dr. Jenkins is in the back with a stack of them, and on your way out, you can go ahead if you want some. Go ahead and grab some and distribute them. Do them as the Lord impresses on you to do. All right. Thank you again for being here this evening. Again, please invite somebody to join us next Tuesday evening if this was a blessing to you. If you know anybody who will be blessed. For those that are online, we invite you to like, share, subscribe, and send this to somebody else as well. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a blessed evening.